Okay, we're live on the air. This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're talking to Holly West of the Dead Groove Band, also of Zepparella. So thank you for
Hello.
being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for
How are you
having
doing
me.
tonight?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Got me another cup of coffee, so I'm ready to do this.
We also let people know that we are a featured podcast on Newsly. You see that little icon says Newsly up there. If you use coupon code GHOST, you get 1 month free premium subscription so you can stop scrolling and start listening. Fam Electric Ghost podcast is on Newsly. So what we like to do is since 2016, we've been talking to emerging artists and musicians, and we're actually at episode with this episode, we've actually hit, I think, episode 912 of our show. We've been around that long, but we're getting closer to our thousands episode 1000. So thank you again for being on the show. It's always cool to talk to musicians because that's where we started. And
Yeah.
so you're Dead Groove Band. You're based in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, in Los Angeles. We live in Long Beach, so it's like south of LA, but hopefully moving closer
And
soon.
you founded it in 2020.
Yeah, during the
That's
pandemic,
cool.
pretty much.
But you founded the band in 2020.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So was
Yeah.
that hard? Was that hard to do? Like, did you just record at
Yeah.
that time?
Yeah.
Did you just work on
Basically,
material?
yeah, well, the drummer and I we live together. So the guitar player lives in Peru. So it was definitely an internet thing
Hmm.
going back and forth with different tracks. And then eventually we ended up going to Peru and doing two songs first, just to see how it would work out.
Wow. So you were doing that internet thing, like, well, I've been a podcaster for a while. Internet is my thing. But like,
Yeah.
did you find recording that way, was that something that you were used to, or was you had to learn how to do?
Well, ever since the technology has shifted in production to where you can kind of work on things remote, it's been a lot easier. And thankfully, as long as I've been in the music industry, I've kind of had that already. So, um, my first record, everybody that worked on the record didn't live where I lived. The people I worked with, I would go, or that I did the demos with, I would go to their house and create demos and stuff. But that's kind of how it started with this one too. Is we would do the demos here and just get them as good as possible, and then we went to when we finally travel again. We went to Peru and worked with Cesar and did the other two songs there hands on.
Hands on, yeah. But you were able to put like, kind of like digital audio workstations, the Pro Tools and the things like that. You can put together tracks and then send them through like, Google Drive or whatever. You just you
Yeah.
can where people can actually, and I've done albums with people that way that I never physically ever met. That they were totally done through the net. And I put it on my mixing console, then they put it on theirs and go back and forth. And it's always better, back in the day to actually be in the same room because there's
Hmm.
things that happen in the same room, but you can do it. It's possible. So do you have a preference like being a band um like in Zepparella, you guys are touring band. So
Hmm.
that's a different type of vibe, I guess, to actually be playing in front of live
Yeah.
crowds and writing in this other way.
Yeah, yeah, they're definitely different things. Dead Groove's finally getting out touring. We're finally starting to book shows for the rest of the year. We've had one show in Lima, Peru. We've had a show in LA and a show in San Francisco. I'm sorry, not LA. San Francisco and San Diego.
Oh, that's awesome.
But our guitar player still isn't here from Peru. We're going through that whole immigration process. So it's kind
Oh,
of
it's taken. Is it getting harder to get?
a
Is that
lot.
something that wasn't a problem before and now it's a problem?
Well, rules change all the time. Laws change all the time in different countries, and to come to the U.S. is really hard unless you get married. That's not the route that we're obviously doing, that's not what he's here for. So it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of people trying to write, you know, uh, write to the government saying that, vouching for this person.
Mhm.
It's a lot of different things. And so we're actually already having to restart the process because of other things that fell through. So it's a very long, draining process, and you have to wait, weeks at a time for answers. So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
so what we're doing to combat that while we're still doing live shows and still rehearsing is we have enlisted Jeff Young, who was the guitar player for Megadeath back in the early years.
Oh,
He's
wow.
a friend of ours, so he's actually stepped in to help us with these U.S. dates that we have.
Oh, so
We
you're
will
still
be
playing.
going, yeah. So we will be going back to Peru at the end of the year, and then obviously Cesar will, our original guitar player, will be doing a show with us down there, unless he gets up here before then. But we're not really sure. So to play it safe for the rest of the year, we're probably going to be playing with Jeff Young, unless there's something else that happens.
So the whole vibe of your band, maybe you can talk about like what is the direction of the Dead Groove Band? Like what is your vibe? Maybe you could talk about like why you felt you wanted to create the band in the first place.
Well, we all really like rock and roll, and we wanted to do a hard rock project. All three of us are, the drummer and the guitar player. They're both from Lima, Peru, so their version of American music is a little different than our version of American music. To them, these people are gods,
Oh,
and so they get very, very infatuated with certain bands and stuff.
mm,
So it's really interesting to see their influences, which are our influences as well, but they also have their Peruvian influences too, and so they both
also it gives you a different sound. Yeah. So then
exactly.
you have it's like the interpretation of like American blues by
Hmm.
a band from another part of the world. Like I lived in Tokyo
Zeppelin
and
is,
I was in Shibuya and I was listening to these like Japanese bands that were like infatuated with Coltrane
yeah.
and they were doing this bebop. It was like Davis and Coltrane type bebop, and it was like in the same vein
Uh-huh.
as that, but it was like a Japanese twist
Okay.
because they were bringing their own culture into it, so it wasn't exactly what Coltrane and those guys were doing. It had this other vibe.
Yeah.
There was this Eastern vibe on top of like this blues bebop vibe, and I was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." Like when you can get that synergy of two different cultures coming
Exactly.
together. So it sounds like the same type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and you see that with, I mean, that's kind of how rock and roll was started. You have the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin taking all the old James, or
Yeah,
sorry,
Lead
Robert,
Belly and Robert Johnson, all that stuff.
all that stuff, and turning it into heavy songs, and it's really cool to marry those two influences. So the drummer Fred, he grew up. His father was a or like a percussionist, basically. He's a drummer, but
Mhm.
mainly a percussionist. And so, at 13 years old, he's gigging with his dad, and they're playing all the old, all South American kind of influenced major songs, major hitters. So he got a lot of that influence at a very young age. And then he
Mm.
started doing rock and roll, and then he got into metal. So he has a very broad range of his
Wow.
influences, which is
Yeah,
great.
that's wide. Yeah, that's very wide because, like, you got that you guys got his own kinda, regional feel, Peruvian feel, and then you've got the rock, and then you got the metal. It's a metal
Mhm.
is, it's a variation because,
Yeah,
you
and
can get the Delta blues, and you have, like, the type of heavy metal. What type of metal is it that you guys are kinda
well,
vibing in?
so he's actually in Kings of Thrash with Jeff Young right now, and that's David Ellefson's band. David Ellefson was the bass player for Megadeth.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
so it's that
and
type of
so,
metal.
yeah, so he formed this band, and they started doing all the old cuts that Megadeth doesn't do now, and but Fred has also been in POWERFLO, which is BillyBio and Sen Dog from CypressHill, and a couple other guys. They have this kind of like power rap metal kind of. It's pretty cool.
Hybrid.
Yeah, kind of a
hybrid group of like hip hop and metal.
Exactly.
Like Rage Against the Machine was kind of like the idea of like, oh, you can take this kind of MC5 punk aesthetic, hip hop, and then punk.
I see very punk influence for sure, and BillyBio is kind of metal punk as well. So he was in Biohazard. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of the Clash.
With
MC5 and Death and
Death. Yeah, there you go. You don't get much more metal than Death.
Well, MC5 and Death are kind of like the early, like oh, this is like the beginning. You know, because you get everybody say, oh, the Clash and the Sex Pistols. Like, what about MC5 and Death?
Yeah, exactly.
People forget about some of the foundational bands like the Velvets. Like almost all the alternative music is kind of Lou Reed and the Velvets deciding to do different topics. It's not just love songs. Let's do songs about New York's dark underbelly. That do something different.
Exactly. Yeah.
So your influences as a go ahead.
I was just saying. So his influences come around, and you can tell in his drumming. You can tell some of these beats, but he's also in the Bulletboys, which is 80s hair metal, and he has to go from. I really like. I've seen his like growth as a drummer. He's obviously been an awesome drummer the whole time I've known him, but you be around someone for a few years and you still see growth in them, right? And so for him to just kind of throw away a lot of the cymbals and a lot more of the drums and go to a basic kit and just really love it and rip it up, he's just such a great job with it. It's really cool to see, because he didn't really practice on it.
He didn't do in music. What's interesting is less is more.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't really use 5 strings or anything for my basses. I use 4 strings because I don't really need much more.
That's always interesting because some people like they think they have to have the double drums, double bass, and set up like bottom, which we know about for your other band. But sometimes it's having a simpler setup. Is like having a restriction. Like sometimes I'm using like a mono synth, like a Moog. It's not a polyphonic thing. You can't do chords, right?
Yeah.
But you're limited to just single notes.
Yeah.
But what you can do with those 3 oscillators and the notes, you could build like 3 note chords with 1 note. And so there's things that you can do with the restrictions that cause you to do other things that change your sound. And sometimes like living with the restrictions actually forces you to be more inventive and do things that you wouldn't expect. And that's why I always find it's interesting when people actually decide like, I don't need to have all these things. I can actually bring it down to basics.
Yeah, I feel like it's just more impressive. It's just more impressive to me.
Who influenced you as like coming up and as a musician? Who did you who made you want to play your instrument?
Well, I started wanting to sing when I was really young, and so I thought the best way to learn or the best instrument with that would be a piano. And so my earliest influences were singing influences. Really, it was Whitney Houston, Gloria Estefan, Linda Carlisle. There's just
right? Well, the voice is an instrument. The voice is an instrument. People forget that.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just they just had beautiful voices. And so I started on piano and I didn't get very far with that. Then I got a guitar and I didn't get very far with that. I put everything down for a really long time. And then I picked up bass because one of my friends needed a bass player. And
That seems to
but
happen. That seems to happen with bands. Somebody
yeah,
needs to play the bass, and somebody steps up.
just play this note the whole time. Okay. You know? But the my influences, I guess, changed all over because I mean throughout the years because there was never one time that I really broke out as a musician until later in life. So I always tried and tried and tried, but my influences have, like I said, ranged from you know, Whitney Houston, and now my influences are like Clutch, you know, or Rival Sons. Yeah. So it's just.
Did you ever feel like you want? Did you ever take like your volume, the influences of the voice, and use the vocal melodies of the singers in your bass lines?
No, I don't think I have, but that's a great idea.
Well, that's an approach that some people are like. I know that like
You
Hendrix
mean like,
sometimes.
oh, you mean like
Yeah,
my voice, not like
yeah,
someone.
yeah. Well,
Oh,
maybe no. The idea of being a vocalist, like the
mhm,
vocalist that you like,
mhm.
and so some people decide like, oh, you know, I love singers. Being a singer, yeah, that's an instrument. Your voice is an instrument. So some
Yeah.
people can channel like, oh, they like a certain type of vocalist, and
Uh,
then they try to take those vocal melodies and put
uh-huh.
them on the bass, and
Gotcha,
then
gotcha.
incorporate that into their song. But like a lot of jazz guys might do that. They'll take,
Okay.
you know,
Oh
the
yeah.
show tunes,
Uh-huh.
melodies, and then make those the bass lines and
There
run
you
them
go.
around. But it's just a point of view.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. That's really cool. I do on
Yeah,
like some songs that I have a little bit more freedom with, I'll marry some of the vocals with it, but never thought about writing over vocal lines like that. No.
yeah, it's just I'm an experimental artist, so I always try to look at different things in a different way, just to
Absolutely.
say, "Whoa, what did you?" Because like I think Hendrix, a lot of times people didn't realize that he was actually listening to Coltrane sax and
Mhm.
trying to like do that on the guitar.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
there's some saxophone elements that Coltrane's playing that found
Mhm.
its way into Hendrixian playing.
There
And
you
then,
go.
like, I was always very interested in the fact it's like, oh, you could take a sax type of way of playing and try to play that on a guitar, or you know,
Exactly.
so you can take a wholly different instrument and then try to apply it to
Mhm.
it. You know, not something that you wouldn't expect, and then that becomes like, oh wow, that becomes a different approach. So I've always been very interested in people who just kind of either accidentally do it or maybe intentionally do it or just thought like, yeah, I want to change it up and do that.
Yeah, definitely. And you see a lot of that nowadays, I think, with people being able to program so many things, right? So you get somebody that at least knows how to work a keyboard, and they can add some of those vocal lines to a loop, and then either start rapping over
Mhm.
it or start singing over it or start playing something over it. So yeah, yeah, it's nice to be
Yeah, and
experimental.
then yeah, because you can take the MIDI channel and then apply it.
You make it into
So
anything too.
he's like, oh, I turned it into MIDI, and then
Right.
now I then I can
Yeah.
MIDI this, you know. But like I like to go take like like recordings, field recordings,
Yeah.
and then turn them into MIDI notes
Apples.
and then also have the sample. So then
Yeah.
you take the MIDI notes and run it through a drum machine, and then you take the actual sounds and run it into a sampler and then chop it up and then mix it around, make something that wasn't even what I recorded. Like
Yeah.
the whole point is to try to make it very experimental, so it almost looks like a sound painting, you know,
Yes.
so it becomes like the way Yes and Genesis and Pink Floyd used
Mm.
to do stuff. That's kind of like my head
It can
space.
be addicting. When I the very first time that I learned how to loop and arrange stuff on what is it, GarageBand, I think I spent like an entire month
Yeah.
making songs. I was like addicted to it. 17 or 18 songs in 1 month. Just
Well,
it was crazy.
it's just so freeing to be able to have those tools that, you
Yeah.
know, McCartney and, you know, and the boys, like, if you think about it, like, that's what they used to use the studio as
Hmm.
an in and the DAW has allowed people to do that, you know, and a lot of the hip hop artists that started with these the MPCs and stuff and the samplers.
Hmm.
They were able to kind of do George Martin level stuff.
Yeah.
They started doing all this stacking, and it became more like you listen to, whether you like the Public Enemy or De La Soul or not, the fact that they did these very layered things that we hadn't seen since like Sergeant Pepper or Abbey Road, like the level of construction of some of these songs. They were like,
Yeah.
wow. And they weren't initially musicians, they were more like DJs and hip hop architects, but they started doing things that now is that kind of crossed into rock, where some of this hip hop and EDM type of production that you can apply it to any genre.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely branching out. I mean, it would be kind of, I mean, like there's certain music that I like, there's certain music that I don't like, but how boring would it be if everybody did what I liked? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's really great that people are experimenting so much, and finding things that really sound cool that we've never heard before. And whether they have, 10 people that like it or, 100,000 or more, it's just really cool that we can experiment now so easily too.
Well, that's the whole thing. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is that being an emerging artist in the industry. And again,
Mhm.
the whole thing with this podcast is that since 2016, I've focused on primarily emerging and independent artists. And the
Mhm.
reason I did is because I kind of grew up with college radio. I
Yeah.
grew up listening to the REMs, the
Mhm.
Radioheads,
Yeah.
the Camper Van Beethovens, all these like very indie bands,
Yeah.
Sun Volt, Wilco, before they were big. And like the fact that the college radio guys, we used to break all of these bands because like we didn't just want to play like the standard radio. We wanted to hear something different,
Yeah.
from a different voice. So what's your take on being like an emerging artist in the industry?
Well, uh, I've been in this industry since 2011. Um, I've put out records since about 2011, 2012. And so a lot has changed in the last 10 years. Like a whole lot has changed. But there's still things that are the same too. Now, it's one thing that's changed is getting record deals. About 10 years ago, you weren't really getting a lot of record deals anymore. You're getting distribution deals, which help. But if you want to get a record done, you kind of have to pay it out of pocket, or you have to find somebody that is willing to make you a record deal and pay for your record plus distribution. So you're stuck with really doing a lot of the groundwork yourself. And over the few albums that I've put out, I've seen whatever I put out, whatever I like my output of my own work, meaning my marketing, PR, ads, whatever I'm trying to do, I get that much back in return. So I've learned a lot putting out certain, albums with certain people and who's working hard and who's not. I know that at this point that you really have to work really hard. It's not just, we are signed to a record label, but they're not really doing as much as you would hope, a record label would do to put yourself out there. So we have to do a lot of that ourselves. Every day we're
Mhm.
posting we even have a clothing line that we're putting, tons and tons of different graphics on shirts and pants and leggings and
Yeah, it's
whatever.
your merch.
Yeah,
So your merch.
exactly. It's all
Do you
part of
find
it.
that do you find that the merch ends up giving you more income than the music?
Not at this point.
No.
It's now that we're playing out, yes, but having the clothing line, we actually started the clothing line first. It was Dead Groove Clothing. We started before we even decided to start the band. And so we put a bunch of different
Oh.
designs on there that were Fred's designs. He's a graphic artist. And so we were doing a little bit. Some of them were in his favor, and some were in mine, as far as like like I have like me playing bass, and then there's some drumming ones for him. So we were selling some of those, especially during the pandemic, because people were buying a lot of stuff like that during the pandemic to help out artists. So yes, during the pandemic for sure. Now, no, unless we're playing shows. So when we're out playing a show, we might actually get paid more merch money than the show. It just depends on what the guarantee is.
Yeah, that's the one. That seems like the strange thing about the devaluation of music, just because then the Napster thing, and then streaming services, and then the whole subscription model, where suddenly it went from paying $9 for a download to paying $15 for everything.
Yeah.
And so everybody gets like a percentage of a penny.
Yeah.
Versus actually maybe getting a couple of dollars for a download, but nobody downloads anymore. Everybody just streams, and then everything's playlisted. So then, like, you get one song on a playlist, and you can get it to go into millions of hundreds of plays, and even then, it's not what you would have got if you sold. People bought that 45, or people bought the CD. But the T-shirt will make you more money.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, how things have shifted. Our music isn't the commodity anymore. It's the what do you get with the music, because the music, because it's master, is free, right? Yeah, exactly.
We're in the same game.
So they're getting money somewhere, right? Yeah. So it has it's completely it's completely shifted. So your money your music right now is just your business card, as far as everybody's concerned. They want to say, oh, well, let me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if
I like them, maybe I'll listen to another one.
Yeah, well, it seems like that's why musicians were really hurt by the pandemic, because a lot of musicians, before the pandemic, the way they made money was touring, because the concerts would give them the cash, and then you'll be on the road and you're getting real cash compared to what you get on. It's almost like Spotify is like a radio station, right? Exactly. And so people know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you really don't make the big money. It's more like an ad. And then
with one of my records, I didn't want to put it on Spotify because I was so against Spotify. I still don't have Spotify downloaded. We use Fred's for that, but I just didn't believe in the whole get your money for free kind of thing, or get your music kind of thing. It's just like, well, how does that even work? That just collapses the whole industry. I mean, obviously we've made adjustments to where you can make your own music on your laptop or whatever. But then the problem is that there's so much music out there to sort through. Nobody knows what's good anymore.
It's so flooded.
Yeah,
it's gotten totally flooded.
Yeah. So you're talking about going back to talk about podcasts, or not podcasts, playlists. That's also a super important part of PR, and it's something that you have to do yourself. So getting your own interviews, getting your own getting on playlists, all of that. We do that all in house too, like in ourselves. We go find the playlists and we propose to them, hey, will you play this on your playlist? Sometimes you have to pay for playlists, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. It's kind of like the old payola at the radio station. Like, I'm a child of the 70s, and it was kind of known that they and our people used to go to the big radio and give them the cash, give to the DJ to get them to Wolfman Jack, to get Wolfman Jack to play that. Wolfman Jack needed a little scratch, if he was going to play that band. And that was like the same thing with the big radio stations. It was kind of like that's what they did. To get it out there. It seems like the model was kind of still similar for the playlist. It seems like, it's deja vu.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what to think about radio stations so much anymore either, because I mean, I don't think anybody really listens to them anymore. And I mean, maybe college radio stations, but maybe not. I think people are still just listening to playlists.
Yeah. Well, the radio has kind of gotten supplanted by the playlist and by the TikToks and the all the social media mechanisms to listen to music. In fact, it's like I get higher royalties for the music that's on YouTube or my music that's on a reel.
I actually do like YouTube. I know that YouTube does pay, And so I subscribe to YouTube, and that's how I typically listen to my music, is on YouTube. I like music videos anyways.
Yeah, the video. It's kind of like the real MTV.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm kind of glad that MTV went, I guess, bankrupt or whatever, because that's what they deserve.
Well, they went away from, I grew up when they were at the heyday.
Yeah, exactly.
And
they went through all that reality, and so now they deserve to be bankrupt.
Well, where's the music? Because I grew up as a kid, and like it was music all day, like 79, 80, right? I'm a kid, and I'm watching like Joy Division, and I'm seeing Duran Duran. I even see the Who doing Barbara O'Reilly, and I'm like, wow, I seeing the Clash. And being a young kid, I got into bands. I mean, I actually started playing because I saw the Clash and I saw the Who.
Exactly.
And then I saw some like Yes, showing like a Yes video, a roundabout or something. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I want to play. And then I started playing in the basement with a bunch of my friends because like we saw these bands playing. And it's like, wow, that's cool. We should do that.
Yeah, everything's very individualized now. We don't have like one like great source. If you go find
it's all over the map. You can go find what you like, but it's not the channel like the VJ playing this thing, maybe on some satellite channels there are some music video channels that actually just play music and play out the concerts and stuff, but they're here and there. But it is interesting that bands now, I guess because COVID is at the end, so now you can actually get on the road and play again. So do you like to be in festivals or play like with like a whole group of bands, or do you go in like as your Dead Groove owns that club tonight, or do you work with a bunch of other bands and play like in a kind of a community of bands playing a club?
Well, yeah, with Dead Groove, it's definitely kind of whatever we can get at this point, because it's like we're just getting this train rolling. I think maybe in a couple of years we'll be able to pick and choose a lot more, but we are reaching out to venues and headlining some venues. We have some a tour coming up in September, I think, and it's going to be with a couple tribute bands and some local bands of the places that we go to. And so like with Zepparella, for instance, we're usually the headliners. We don't have any openers. It's a 2-hour gig. It's usually used. Yeah. So we're not there yet with Dead Groove Band, but we're slowly but surely getting there. We've played 2 sold out shows. No, but we weren't headlining. But we're going to be headlining this year for sure. And so the places that we are booking, we're doing headlining gigs.
Are you working on any like singles or EPs or anything like that?
We have thought about, so our record just came out March 30th. So we're kind of still on the high of celebrating that, still putting out some music videos and stuff. So when we do go back to Peru, hopefully we'll record some more down there. That should be in November or December. And we're hoping to do an EP, and I want to do some covers on that EP. Maybe a new song and a new cover or something like that. We'll see.
So do you sell your album like a CD or vinyl or tape through like your website?
Yeah, we sell the CD. We just got a quote on vinyl, so we will be doing vinyl very soon. But the CD is available on our website or on our label's website. And our website is deadgrooveband.com. And then our label is Rock Avenue Records.
So that I'll add that on when we distribute the podcast. I'll add to your primary website.
Okay.
But yeah, what I find is like vinyl seems like a really cool opportunity for bands, because it seems like the vinyl audience is the kind of like audience a band would want, because like if somebody buys a record on vinyl, they're more likely that they're actually going to listen to all your songs.
Yeah.
And then, and then kind of like the old school, because I'm a child of the 70s, you know, and I listened
Yeah.
to 8-track or vinyl
Mm.
or 78 or 45. And when I listened to like Pink Floyd, I listened to the whole thing. I listened to
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin. I listened to the whole thing.
We did too.
Today, you know, yeah, it's like, you know, if you play lists, like maybe you heard one song from a band, you don't really know who a band is to
Yeah.
me from one song. Like
Yeah.
you only know a band when you go into the deeper tracks. And that's, you know, being a music fan, I'm an album guy. You know, I
Mhm.
just I listen to bands because I actually tend to like the deeper songs than better than the singles. And so
Absolutely.
that's just me. But I don't know about the generation today. But do you find that your
Yeah.
fans are more like they actually know your work,
Yeah, they're coming
like a
around.
more than
Yeah, I think music videos helps that a lot. You know, because people are more inclined to watch a music video all the way through just to see, you know, if it's at least interesting and the song is interesting, they'll watch the whole thing. And
I
then if
watch
you
the
got
whole
another one, they'll watch the videos. So I feel like vinyl is definitely the same way, and that's why we want to go the vinyl route. The problem with vinyl is that you have to order a certain amount per order. Um, there's two different ways to do vinyl. You could do cut vinyl or you could do press vinyl. Cut vinyl is very expensive. Press vinyl is still expensive. And then you have to sell the vinyl. So it's an investment. It's a big investment.
thing.
But the cool thing is that people are coming back around saying, you know, this is a piece of art. This is something that I always want to have, because we're hearing our parents and our grandparents going, man, I wish I would have had my vinyl collection. I wish I still had my vinyls.
Yeah.
And so I think we're catching on to that and
Yeah.
saying, yeah, you know what, vinyl's definitely, and that's how we were intended to like kind of listen to music anyways, you know. It sounds so raw and
Well, it gives
vinyl.
that thing. Yeah, I think it also is like the whole package. Like, you know, being a kid, I mean, I picked up Purple Rain on vinyl.
Mhm.
And when I
Yeah.
brought it home, I just had the whole package. I had the lyrics. And it's the whole thing. And even with the Zeppelin albums, to be able to
Yeah.
have that packaging on those classic Zepp albums. And it was
Mhm.
like a part of, you know, in Pink Floyd.
Mhm.
If you look at their covers, it was like, there
Yeah.
was like part of even the Who. If you look at Tommy, you open up
Mhm.
Tommy or Quadrophenia, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is important, you know. And as a music fan, it was like I would sit there, read the liner notes, look at the pictures, look at the whole thing, and it was like this whole art experience that was beyond just the music, and it made me
Yes.
kind of connect to the band. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
people, if you just listen on your phone, you don't connect like you do with the vinyl. I just really don't
Yeah.
think you connect to the band.
Yeah. And we're very, very fortunate that Fred, our drummer, is a graphic artist, a graphic designer, and he has done a beautiful job of designing our record. The vinyl will be a little different just because like having a trifold vinyl is kind of is super, super
Oh wow,
expensive.
that's awesome.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
expensive.
we're working with mock-ups right now to see what we want to do. But our CD is a trifold CD, and
Oh, that's cool.
has also you pull out the insert with all of the lyrics and everything, and it has all different. You know, we've he's just beautifully crafted the whole thing. So it is definitely a piece of art, and we hope that when people put the CD in, that they look at all the different pictures and they read all the words, and it's cool. It is a great experience, just like having a old vinyl.
Now, do you guys like when you do have a merch table, do you like sign your albums or do you like connect with your fans? I know some fans are like, well, I don't know if I should be that close to the fans or not. So
Yeah. Well, the thing about like meet and greets, 'cause we've all done like a lot of meet and greets, is basically it just depends on what's going on. You know, if you're on tour and you have a lot of singing to do, it's kind of hard to go out and try to meet everybody,
yeah,
expose yourself. So that's why you do see a lot of singers. They're not going to go out and meet people. It's not because they're, they don't want to talk to people. It's mainly a safety issue. As far as me
well, you
though,
want
I
to protect
like,
yourself and your voice too.
yeah, Yeah, yeah. When I'm on tour with Zepparella, I don't have to sing. I'm just the bass player. I don't want to get anybody else sick or anything, but I do always, go out and try to meet people and sign things and stuff. And you do have to realize, like, when people go to a show, even like there are going to be people there that are sick because they don't want to miss the show and they don't know when you're going to be back. So there's always that possibility. So I think it's really important to meet your fans, though, and I'm kind of a social butterfly when I get in the scene, and I'm out and playing a show, and I feel very like hostess-esque, I feel like I need to make people feel welcome and to have a good time at the show.
Yeah, be there.
Yeah. So I do love going out and signing things, but if it gets to a point where I don't feel safe going out, like if I feel like it's going to be a long tour and I just have to be careful, then I may not. But I always love interactions with fans.
Yeah, the whole COVID thing, and then even the security considerations kind of changes it from depending on the vibe of the club or what's going on at the festival.
Yeah.
If it's like controlled to a certain extent, if it's like seems out of control, and you're like, well, I don't know about that, But yeah, it's just
there's been times I've been on tour where people have just ran through the green room and been like, "Hey, I always wanted to meet you," and it's like, wait a second.
Really? That happened?
I'm supposed to have no one come in because this is supposed to be my safe room. We're away from our houses. This is like our safe zone, and
you got to consider that because there's been a history that you don't want to get into, but the fact is, like, you gotta feel secure. And I understand the fans want this and fans want that, but you got to be able to be productive and feel safe as a musician because the world is kind of strange. You never know who's like out there. But the whole thing about like having physical product for music, and not even product, it's more of like an art. It's art to me. Like go back, being a record collector, and I go back and look at my father's like James Brown 78s. Or look at the Parliament Funkadelic albums. You just look at the artwork. It's like the artwork on some of that stuff from the 70s and the 60s. You're like, wow. It was like really intentional what the bands wanted to do. And if you can bring that back, then I think you can get a different type of fan they'll actually appreciate a deeper vision of the band. That actually will get into, and they'll probably keep on going up, and they'll actually come to the shows, and they'll buy the t-shirts, and they'll get on your mailing list because they actually start feeling connected.
Yeah, and that's one reason that we wanted to incorporate the clothing line in with the band and with so many different options is because we don't want just your typical merch. We don't want everything to say Dead Groove on it. We want everything to just be cool and for people to feel like they want to be part of that vibe.
Yeah, the whole idea of your band is just to get into that groove. I believe is like, and it's like it's to feel like when I created Phantom Electric, this idea I wanted to get into this kind of Ghost in the Machine, and for real, like with these synths, and I want to bring this kind of progressive rock back. That was my vibe. It's like I like Genesis, I like rock, I like Pink Floyd, like Funkadelic. I want to bring that Keith Emerson stack of synths back to people. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm trying to channel. So, like, you want to have people feel that even through your merch, so with what you're trying to present. And it's probably more than just your logo with your name. You're trying to get the whole art experience.
Yeah, we have like Jim Morrison on stuff. We have what are they? Like we have different like monster looking things. Anything that has to do with music, like Bob Marley, Frank Zappa, just stuff we're influenced by.
Oh, Zappa, I love that. Yeah, well, Zappa and the Mothers, that's like foundational for me too, because it's all kind of like Funkadelic and the Mothers of Invention. They're like in the same headspace. because it's just like being able to go out there and have the kind of Grateful Dead vibe that they're
Uh-huh.
just gonna jam. You'll be that jam band. They go out
And
there and then the
I
jam
love
band,
that.
it's like that's cosmic, a cosmic jam band. That the idea that you can have that direction. That
Mhm.
Zappa always loved the fact that he was like he's got classical stuff, he's got jazz stuff, he's got rock, he's got psychedelic. He had the kind of
Yeah,
Andy Warhol kind of happening thing going on around him. And I'm like,
yeah.
that's just fantastic. That
It's
because you can
great.
go any way you want, right? Because then if you're in that kind of space, you're not restricted.
Yeah, it's definitely something magical about Zappa. I'm not a huge fan. Fred's a huge fan, but I just recently found out my dad's a huge fan.
Oh, you didn't
Had
know
no
that.
idea. I had no idea. Had no idea.
Yeah, freak out.
Yeah, he started busting out some lyrics the other day. I was like,
Yeah,
"What?"
the stuff is very it's like it is freak out. Like, because
Yeah.
that's one of his things. Like, the mothers are so avant-garde in terms
Mhm.
and he had this sense of humor that's very weird. And
Yeah.
even to this day, it's like that is not standard pop music at
Mhm.
all. And
Absolutely.
it's in a different space than what Jim Morrison was doing. It's different than Dylan's different. It's
Mhm.
totally like, wow, that's a
Mhm.
totally different headspace. But it's like it's just cool that he was willing to do it
Yeah.
because people would have probably told him, like, that's not commercial. Yeah, it's not. But he felt like doing it because that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so when you write a song, when you're working on songs, is it more like do you feel like I don't know, everybody writes a song from a different place. And I talk to songwriters and they say, well, it's kind of whatever serves the song. Like one day I might be just walking in the woods and I did my diary or I just drove with the band and we came out by accident and just happened.
Mhm.
Are you very intentional with your songwriting or you kind of let it flow?
I'm very intentional with this project for sure. And I mean, if something does come up and I have the idea for it and then I can marry it into this project, I will. But for the most part, what's been happening is Caesar and Fred will kind of work on the music part. And when they feel they've got something that flows really good, they'll send it to me. And then I'll take lyrics and melody and put that over it and see what flows with that. Sometimes we'll take out parts, sometimes we'll change parts. If they don't like some of my melodies, we'll change them or whatever. First, I throw a hissy fit and then I finally change them, but I end up changing them. Just kidding. But yeah, so we just kind
Yeah.
of work it out to where I've taken this kind of step back from the writing the music part because having a new band and also the fact that I don't even speak the same language as Caesar does. He speaks Spanish primarily and I speak English primarily. So we don't really communicate that well. Fred is
You communicate
bilingual.
through the music. Oh,
Yeah.
through the music maybe
Right.
more than talking.
Right, right. But I kind of let them, him and Fred work all of that out as well because I know how it is to write riffs and write it with a drummer first. It's much easier to do that and then bring another entity into the mix.
Mhm.
So for this record specifically, maybe the next record will be different, but for this one specifically, I just kind of wanted them to work on the music, bring it to me, and then we'll work other things out. If we have to throw away a piece because it's too long or I don't know what goes there, we
Mhm.
will. But as far as like the lyrics and stuff, all of the subject matter is kind of agreed upon before I start writing because like Fred and I are in a relationship, so it's very hard to talk about other relationships if we're in a relationship in a band.
Yeah.
So we just kind of leave that one out. And so like our subject matter is kind of interesting at that point because we were talking about like the Book of the Dead, like the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah, talking about the devil, which everybody talks about the devil, right?
Well, that's kinda like, crossroads, go to the devil. That's
Yeah,
that's been there from the beginning.
exactly. Yeah, blues and rock and roll rooted. So there you go. Also like just ghosts is literally about a ghost that you've conjured up and won't leave you alone. Play Your Hand is about
I'm in
karma. Yeah. Yeah, Play Your Hand is about karma. You know, a lot of people, you know, they do kind of a play on words, talk about karma, and this is like dealing cards, but playing your karma basically. Satellite King is literally about a satellite that gets tired of orbiting Earth and wants to shoot out to outer space, which is like what, you know, people that are wandering around Earth going, what the fuck am I doing here? And they just want to leave. So I think
that's cool that you have a varied like song focus, because you know some bands is like, you know, it's like usually, you know, it could be within like a similar subject matter, you know, with and then sometimes it's like that's kind of where they go. But it sounds like you guys are open to, you know, other ideas like that satellite idea. It's kind of
yeah,
sci-fi, but it does appeal to like a real world situation, to a
yeah,
person,
yeah,
um, to a personal type of thing. But somebody could think, oh, that's like a sci-fi story, but then it's actually rooted in humanity. So it's a little
exactly.
bit more complicated than that. So
Yeah.
that sounds cool.
Which I think most sci-fi is written that way, right? I mean, I'm not into
Yeah,
sci-fi, but I hear a
yeah,
lot of
it is.
sci-fi based off of, you know, our real world experiences.
But it's
So that's
trying to like, yeah, you put a layer on it. Like if you go back into Rod Sterling, The Monsters on Maple Street, it's about
yeah,
like all these monsters are coming down, but it was about how humanity deals with like things that are like the stranger or the other, and you don't know what to, you know. So it was really about something that was more societal, but it was a science fiction thing. Oh, these aliens came down and knocked the power out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then but it was actually a statement about psychology and sociology. But science fiction can do that. It can actually do something that may be hard to talk about, but because they throw an alien into it, like, oh, it's about aliens. No, it's actually about something else.
Yeah, you get,
You know,
I mean, I'm a
so
reader,
you
so
can
I get,
actually kind of sneak things in.
yeah, I read a lot, so I get a lot of that. You know, like Kurt Vonnegut, Ayn Rand, Huxley, like all of those authors are very much into that whole futuristic, but still talking about now, but still talking about like society as a whole and where it's going. It just makes you think, you know. I like to have lyrics that make people think, you know. In fact, I did a
Yeah,
song called
yeah, kind of
Home.
like Rush used to take Rush.
Mhm. Yeah, Neil Peart was an amazing writer, but he was a reader as well. You know, he read a lot of books, so he obviously
Yeah,
wrote really well. I think it goes hand in hand, to be honest. I feel like the low hanging fruit is all of the love songs. You know, I feel like anybody can write a love song. It's
yeah,
quite easy to write a love poem. I think I was doing that at 9 or 10, you know. So for me, I like to just branch out of the box, you know. I have a song about, it's called
yeah.
60.
But that was the whole thing I loved about.
I have a song called 69 Corvette.
Yeah, I like it when it's beyond.
Duet. Sorry.
No, I like it when people go beyond just the love song, because a lot of times bands like
Yeah.
focus on love songs, and when you actually have other subject matter, it makes it more interesting.
Yeah, like something like you hear a lot of classic rock. They did a lot of that stuff. Um, we have a song called 69 Stingray. It's about my favorite car, but it doesn't even use 69 Stingray or Corvette or anything in the song. It just says my moto, so it could be about anyone's favorite car, you know. So it's just
Oh,
I just wanted to kind of branch out of like into things that take a lot of classic root, but also kind of newer as well. Like I want it to appeal to this kind of new emerging audience that I think I have a disconnect with, really, to be honest, because I don't really like a lot of the newer music that a lot of people like, you know.
hmm,
So I'm still trying to be able to connect with some of this audience without steering too far off of what I want to do, you know.
yeah, because the kind of like rock itself is not like the top genre anymore. like everybody's into like the electronic and the hip hop and the rap and
Mhm.
country that's kind of like pop country, and
Mhm.
I'm kind of rooted in like bands like the band and the
Yeah.
Yes
Yeah.
and Genesis, and that's not really what's going on either. So so
No,
so
no.
how do I connect to these kids today when like I like Keith Emerson, like I
Mhm.
like Bernie Worrell,
There was
I like bands bands that have like 18-minute songs, and everybody
Yeah,
wants a 2 minutes. What am I supposed to do with that?
yeah, exactly. Radio radio kind of came in and said, "Hey, we don't want anything that's like these old Led Zeppelin songs. We want short and sweet." And so everybody started basically taking their music and just putting into a 3-minute song. There's no long bridges. There weren't these gigantic solos anymore. No jamming. No four
Yeah.
verses. It went down to two, maybe three. At this point, I mean, it's hard for me to write a song with two choruses, let alone three. I'm sorry, two verses, let alone three, with choruses and pre-choruses in those, a bridge, and you can't put everything in there anymore.
Or like an intro. You used to be able to have an intro that was
Yeah,
almost like as long as a song today, and an
right,
outro that was as long as the song today.
exactly, exactly.
You know,
Anything from
my intro is
pre-chorus.
the yeah. You get somebody, you send somebody one of my songs, and they say, "Well, the intro is the song." I said, "Well, what about the rest of it? The intro, that's the song. Like the rest
Yeah,
of it, get rid of it." And I'm like, "Really?"
yeah. I feel like at some point that's how it's going to be, because if we look at all this 16-second theory from like social media, everybody's just, you only have 16 seconds. I mean, is it really going to be an intro for every song now? Okay, next song. Okay, next song. Eventually, I guess it's going to be
Yeah,
that
yeah.
way.
How would you ever get a how could you ever get a stairway to heaven? How are you ever gonna get a stairway to
Never,
heaven?
never again.
Or like even like the Eagles, Hotel California, you're never gonna get those if people aren't willing. The weird thing is though, in the hip hop genre, I have heard songs that actually are longer than 2 minutes,
Yeah.
and concept albums that
You
people
know,
actually listen to the whole thing through. So there is a way to get people to listen to concept albums, but I guess maybe we have to figure out a different way to attract that audience.
what I really like about hip hop right now is they're actually incorporating real musicians into their live shows.
Yeah,
Like you
I
just
think that's
had,
where the change is.
I'm not saying that DJs and well, some DJs are, but some DJs do just press play. But I'm not saying that all hip hop didn't have real musicians that helped them. But to have like a real guitar player, drummer, and a bass player, and a keyboardist like playing these tracks, which you can do, is just really cool to me.
Yeah.
I hated it. I hated
Well,
the
then
way it
they
was
start
going.
getting they actually start yeah, but then they actually have the intros, and they have, like, the second
The
melody, and
dynamic.
they have
Dynamics.
more complicated parts, and you actually
Yeah.
have ideas of, like, concept albums that
Mhm.
actually have themes like Tommy. They
Mhm.
actually have these pieces that people actually listen to the whole thing through as a 60-minute project and not just grabbing the 2 minute. So it's like if that can happen in that genre,
Mhm.
then maybe we can get, and if with more musicians coming into hip hop, and maybe we can get people to respect the rock musicians and the jazz musicians and fusion musicians again, to realize that hey, we've been playing all the time.
I
we
know,
never
right?
we never stop playing, so maybe you want to hear us too.
Exactly. It's very incredible, this shift of what's happened with just because I think the thing is that people don't pay enough attention anyway, to where they didn't see it. They didn't see the shift. But once they see the shift go back to how it was supposed to be done, like as far as I'm concerned, I think it'll be better. I think people will say, "Oh
Yeah,
wow, oh
yeah, yeah.
okay, you can actually play that," and it does. It's inspiring too. It's going to inspire people to pick up instruments and use their time to create something or to learn something, and that's really powerful.
Well, I think it's nothing like a band playing live. Like I saw this
Yeah,
guy at Coachella, just and the thing that
yeah,
I liked about it was that this guy, he came on the set, he had this set that was like a bedroom studio. He
Mm-hmm.
started sitting on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
He was listening to like uh, Al Green, and
Mm-hmm.
then he was playing a bass on the couch. Then he
Nice.
got up and then went over to a keyboard, and then
Cool.
a drummer walked in and
Yeah.
started playing the drums. Then a saxophone player walked in and started playing, and it showed this is what real music is like. Like you can build this vibe, this scene.
Yeah.
And he incorporated some of the things that the hip hop people like by sitting on the couch and listening to the music and thing. And he had some samplers and stuff, but he had real instruments and he had band people. So he figured out how to thread the needle
Mm-hmm.
to bring in the people who like the samples and like that kind of perfect stuff, but then brought in kind of this improvisational jazz and
Mm-hmm.
rock. And then it's like, wow, people, if they see it, they
Mm-hmm.
will like it. So you just
Absolutely.
have to be able to get in front of these audiences and show them what you can do, and then
Yeah.
I think they start to realize it's like, wow, that's what a real musician sounds like.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. It's funny, like, so I'm in a tribute band. This tribute band is Zepparella. They've been around for almost 20 years. So they're one of the original tribute bands before this whole big slew of tribute bands came in, right? And still to this day, we get thanked constantly for bringing the live versions of Zeppelin to life, for them to be able to listen to it live. And we're trying to emulate as close as we can for people playing Zeppelin. And, with a female singer, but we know the power that has because we hear it too. We feel it too. We love live Zeppelin, but then you get haters, of course, that are like, oh, a tribute band, but they're just missing the point completely. I mean, the point is the fact that we can
I think
play
they totally.
loud. It's very important. I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about being a child in the '70s.
Mm-hmm.
Zeppelin was like the '70s to me. Along with the other bands. I mean, I was a big Who fan.
Oh yeah.
And the battle between Bonham and Keith Moon. On
Yeah.
any one day, I'd be saying, I think Keith Moon would kick Bonham and Bonham would kick Keith Moon or whatever. But it was like the idea that you had these like drummers that were so dynamic. Like you got a guy like Keith Moon, you got a guy like, Mitch Mitchell from Hendrix. These guys were just fantastic, and the fact that you guys brought that with a female drummer. And that, I think that's just awesome.
Yeah.
That is just so cool to bring that sound. It was all, these really powerful guy drummers. And then you have a female drummer and a female centered Zeppelin. I think that, because from the start of my podcast, I focused on female singer songwriters who I thought weren't getting attention.
Yeah.
And so the lion's share of my interviews have been female artists from around the world that I thought deserved a platform because I think the industry wasn't really doing that. And so I still, to this day, most of my interviews are with female-centered bands.
That's awesome.
Because I just think that, because I grew up listening to, like the Liz Fairs, the L7s, a lot of the female-centered bands, like Liz Fair called it like like the Riot Girl kind of thing.
Yeah.
That I thought was really cool because I listened to the Runaways. I was totally into the Runaways. I was into L7. I was into all that stuff, and I was like, "That's cool." I don't just need to hear the Replacements or Who's to Do or Black Flag. I like the fact that the female artists started to get out there and get in front of people. It's a different perspective, and I always thought that was cool to hear a different perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting because the industry is finally shifting to a point where like there are definitely bands out there that are wanting to hire women, but for a long time it was just kind of unheard of. I actually saw Zepparella play before I was even a musician, before I was even I was trying to be a musician. I just never could get it right. But I went to this thing called Jameson Ball in Dallas, and I saw them play, and they were so inspiring to me. And eventually I was in the band. But you didn't see it as often, but when you did see it, it was very powerful. Which tells you something, obviously anybody can do anything. We're all human, right? But for the most part, it's nice to have a little bit more recognition these days.
Yeah, I mean, because I was a big fan of Sleater Kinney, and
Mhm.
like I said, the Runaways, like Joan Jett and the Runaways. I mean, I was like, wow, it's like I want to see more of that, and I just decided to find it, and I found the L7s, the Liz Phair's, Juliana Hatfield. I would follow a lot of these women artists, and then I started looking for bands that weren't as popular, that people
Mhm.
didn't know, and I
Yeah.
thought they should know. And whether it's rock or electronic or progressive, and I've talked to classical music. I talk to every genre, every type of
Mhm.
musician, and
Yeah.
I still have wanted to focus on people I thought that weren't being paid attention to, which
Uh-huh.
ended up being a lot of female artists, because
Uh-huh.
that has been the situation in the industry. And even then, when they try to present them in certain ways, I want to look at people and say, like, she's a musician.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the point. I want to talk to you about your craft. That's the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. It's really funny how a lot of women have gotten looked over. I mean, you have so many women who are pioneers of 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 anything, guitar, of bass, of drums, of all singing,
Mhm.
that we've definitely overlooked. It's nice to see that some of them are still very greatly remembered, and especially for being eclectic and weird and a little different. So um, it's interesting to have to go through that, because I'm the type of person that I just feel humans are human. I've been around long enough to know that there's
Yeah,
some
yeah.
great, we all are very, very, very capable of doing the same exact thing. Um, so it's interesting to see the dynamic and see how it's shifting. And finally, I'm like, yes, finally. Um, I still I guess I feel a little bit more progressive in the fact that I also don't really want to be um, like booked with only women bands, or have to do it only
Yeah, yeah.
women's. Well, I'm progressive to the point where I'm also over that hump. So I'm like, okay, guys, just catch up
Yeah, you
bit,
wanna be, like,
a
at a
little bit.
rock show. If the rock festival is not a female rock festival,
Yeah,
it's a rock festival and your band's there.
yeah, yeah.
Right,
Now,
right, yeah.
saying that, I have participated in certain things that I think bring awareness to women, which I feel great with
Mhm.
that. I feel fine with that. For instance, I was a counselor at the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, the all women's first rock and roll fantasy camp, where it was all women.
Oh,
And
cool.
I really, really enjoyed that. Had some great connections, and it was their most successful rock camp because women still
Oh,
feel the ego shift when they get in a room with a bunch of dudes trying to play music. So there's still this weird ego that's centered
mm.
around men sharing the musical space with females. So until that clears up, women won't feel 100% comfortable walking into I'm not saying like for me, for instance, I don't care because I'm a professional musician. I've been doing this for a long time. But women like say that go to the Rock and Roll Fancy Camp that just picked up guitar a couple months ago or have been playing in their
Yeah, you
closet.
just started, yeah.
Yeah, they don't feel as confident. So that gave them space to really be themselves and to blossom into having confidence.
Well,
Um,
that's a positive thing. That's a really
absolutely,
cool thing.
absolutely.
That's what yeah, I don't want to showcase, like, other, that only talk to women artists,
Mhm,
but that it was just a point that I
mhm,
thought people were being neglected. But
absolutely,
yeah,
and that's
and yeah.
why I do some of these things with, all women, or I'm not, my goal isn't to just have like an all women lineups or all women this or all women that. I just happen to be part of certain things that are all women, which I think are
Mhm.
empowering. I'm obviously in an all women's Led Zeppelin band.
Yeah.
And then I also, I performed just recently at the Gritty and Pink all women's jam, and the girl who runs that, she started her organization because, like you, felt that women were undeserved or they weren't looked at
underrepresented,
underrepresented
underrepresented.
in the music industry. And so her platform is basically these women sign up like a Craigslist basically for women who have something to contribute to the music industry, performers, makeup artists, songwriters, PR, website designers, anyone that can contribute to the women to the music industry. They just have
engineers and producers, have been like underrepresented. There's some been really fantastic women engineers and producers that have not been, heralded as much as some of the men. And that's the whole thing is that now in this age where people can do more production work, there's a lot of people who are, doing a lot of engineering and a lot of production work. They need to get herald. People need to know who they are. And sometimes people don't. A lot of music fans don't even understand that they're engineers. They're other people. They don't even know who they are. And there was a time period in music where people did know who they were.
Absolutely,
and they were all guys most of the time.
A lot of times,
so now if there are people doing that, people need to know who they are. That's the whole thing.
The She Rocks Awards. Have you ever heard of the She Rocks Awards? It's an organization.
No, I haven't. That's interesting.
It's an organization out here in California. My guitar player in Zepparella, Gretchen Menn, she won the Inspire Award this year, and we performed there. It's like the closing. She was the closing band, and the year before I volunteered there. And that's when I actually was a little bit more aware of how many amazing women are in the industry, and they've been in the industry for a long time and probably overlooked as well. But, engineers and producers. And there's a woman that runs, I can't even remember the name of the company, but it's like one of the biggest, like it's a huge like sound company or something. But anyway, just like some of these like women who have been running these big gigantic companies that are in the music industry or equipment, it's really cool to see that. We just went, Gretchen and I went to the Gibson headquarters where they make the Gibson guitars. And there are some, they were taking us through, and they're telling us that in certain parts of building the guitar, the women are just better at more of the aesthetic stuff. But they have primarily only women who do those things, and they have primarily only men who do certain things like building, because they're better at building than some of the aesthetic stuff. So I really thought that was great that they recognize strong points in people, and not just based on their gender, it's the fact that that's just how
how it mapped out. That's how it maps out sometimes.
Oh, it is. And so it's really nice to see them put some of these people on pedestals that they can do this job and they can do it so well, and it's nice to see.
If you ever,
there's probably like 30% women that work there, and it's really cool.
If you ever go to like the Moog factory, you see a lot of women, a lot of nerdy people. What I say, a bunch of nerdy guys. There's tons of women putting together the Moogs. They're putting those circuit boards together, and people might have assumed it was other type of person doing that. And it's very common. A lot of that work is very detailed and very intricate. And sometimes if your hands are too big, you can't get in there on the circuit board, especially when you're hand building some of these analog synths. Actually there's some advantages. And so, it's like it maps out to whoever can do what, but it doesn't keep somebody from doing it. But like if you're better, you're better.
Yeah.
If you're faster, you're more accurate, then you're going to get picked to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with utilizing what a specific, even if it comes down to gender, what they can do better. It is what it is.
Yeah. If that's what it maps out to, that's what it is.
Yeah. I still feel like men can't decorate very well, but at least straight men.
Yeah,
But
that's probably true because everything here is just white. This is just my white room with all my scents. And I can't really I can't colors
well,
like it.
from what I
Everything,
see, most if you see like most furniture or like you see it mainly in like RVs. You know those were
oh
not
yeah.
designed by women. With all the what goes with brown?
There's like green, like in the 70s, everything's like green and yellow.
Green and brown,
And I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I
70s.
was like, no, I don't like that. I'm more Scandinavian. Everything's gotta be like white. That's like my whole
Yeah,
motif. I like kind of modern look. That's
yeah,
my thing.
yeah.
But
We should have brown heads
well,
everywhere.
it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been great chatting to you because like I said, I started this podcast in 2016, only talking to musicians. We've opened it up to beyond that now, but our first love is still talking to musicians because that's what we like to do. I mean, that's our passion is music. But yeah, it's been awesome. We want people to check you out. And again, your primary website would it be www.deadgrooveband.com?
Yeah.
I can use that. Yeah,
We're
I had that.
I'm constantly updating it and adding shows and stuff. You have the link tree right here, which has the link to everything. So you can find the website, you can find our clothing website, all of our socials and everything there. Usually everything's at Dead Groove Band.
Okay, cool. Well, they can get to everything there too, so that's good. So at least they got it. So yeah, thank you again for being on the show tonight. It's always great to talk to musicians, as I said. Hopefully, we get to talk to you again. We have people come on over the years. We've had bands come on multiple times if they have something to bring to the audience they're excited about. If you're working on something, we always invite people to come back to kind of push their next project or tour or whatever they're doing. So thank you again for being on the show tonight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.